Brilliant. All right, we are live. Great.
Hello.
Good evening. I'm Ruben from Nobody Listens, and I've got someone with me who you probably know, even if you don't know me. It's Kristi Winters, little red-nosed reindeer. And we
Yes.
are going to talk about the German language and the English language under this very, very clickbaity title, but it's the best I came up with. I
Well,
don't know who
you got to
came up
pull
with the
eyeballs.
idea. Was it you or me?
I think it was just an outgrowth, like it was part of a conversation said, oh, we
Yeah.
should talk about this another time when we have more time to talk about it.
Yeah, when we were just annoying Kevin Logan in the election live stream,
Right. That was it.
when we had a lot of other stuff to talk about, and we still don't have a government over here in Germany, even though that hangout was ages ago.
Yeah. We finally managed to put it together. So that's excellent. That's good. Yeah, but I'm actually interested in learning, like, your mother tongue and then learning a second tongue. If we can start with the languages, because German's actually my third language that I'm learning, and
After
so I'm
Spanish?
finding French.
Oh, French, yeah, no. I
Yeah.
thought we had another discussion topic, but then we don't. Because I don't know, Spanish is also very interesting. It's not as bad as German when it comes to gender, but it's also not as neutral as English, and it has other problems. I think, how many genders does French have?
Two.
2 or 3? 2. Ah, it's weird when you do this or
Yeah.
this.
Oh, right. Yeah, I did that in Mont Saint Michel, and I said, pour deux, and then I went like this, and he went deux. I went, yeah, deux. So I ordered something, and I went una. I went, no, una.
Have
So,
you seen Inglourious Basterds?
no, I haven't. Is there? But yeah, is there a reference there?
It's actually very good that you bring that up first, because Inglourious Basterds is a movie that's mostly in French with a bit of German, bit of English, very little Italian, made by Americans, made by Quentin Tarantino. And there is a scene where someone trying to blend in as a Nazi officer who is from the American army, I think. I haven't seen that in a while. I think he's from the American army, wants to blend in the German Nazi army, and he orders 2 beers like this. Because in Germany, we would order 2 beers like this. We count 1, 2, 3, and not 1, 2, 3. This is actually very, very hard to do. So that is how I learned that you Americans don't do it like this. So there is a lot of communication difference even outside of language. But of course, there is.
On that point, I think another thing that they told people to watch for in terms of spies were men who sat not with their legs crossed sort of at their ankles or over the knee, but like putting one leg on the other knee in more like a 4 shape, because American men like to have their balls spread out. And so they tend to, when they cross their legs, they don't cross them fully. They leave a gap. And European men, I think
if you do it like actually, that's both very uncomfortable for very different reasons for me.
Well, this like, again,
the German thing is uncomfortable in my crotch, and the American thing is uncomfortable for my knee.
But yeah, so that too, like they wouldn't sit with that more sort of space narrowing European way of sitting. So maybe I'm misremembering it, but it is a memory.
That makes sense. Yeah, I don't know, but it makes sense to me. But I have to check on it.
Yes. So yes, French only has feminine and masculine, so it's just the 2 genders, which at least gives you a 50-50 shot every time you need to guess at something. German, of course, makes life harder, but not as hard as what I hear Romanian has, like 6 or something. Like Russian too, they've got weird cases that are left over from the Roman and stuff, I think, in ancient Greek or whatever. But anyway, getting back to learning languages.
What I don't know if it's the same in French, but what I found when I taught myself Spanish is that you have the male and the female, and then when you go into the plural and talk about more than 2 people, you have to use the, if you are speaking about a mixed gender group, you have to use the male. Is it the same
like
in French?
You guys. Yeah. Yes. All fees except if all women but one guy, then you have to say the masculine form for group.
I haven't even thought about it that way. Is that even if you are speaking about a class of a class of, say, 20 girls and one boy, it's still los estudiantes, the male students, even though it's like mostly girls.
Well, I mean, in English, it actually just, it becomes guys. Hey, you guys, or hey, guys, let's go.
But you can work around, hey, you guys. You can say, hey, you folks, or
yes,
whatever.
That's true.
And
you don't. Yes, it's not
like
determined
Spanish,
in that way.
you.
Well, I guess I don't. In French, it's just the plurals, but no, I think. But I'm talking about more like the noun you would call the group,
Oh yeah,
how you would address them. You couldn't address them with saying ladies with one man in the room. Yeah, you have to address them all
of
as
course, if you
guys.
go like with something like that.
Yeah.
So
that's pervasive. That seems to follow. Like I think that is an earlier practice than language. I have a feeling that comes out of an earlier status of men, not wanting to be referred to as women, but the category of man being extended to sort of imply all people, like mankind, or
also,
spokesman.
Spanish and French are, of course, closely related, much more closely than German and English are. By the way, the word man, when you said mankind, the word man actually comes from an older word meaning one. That is why the word man, spelled like man, in Germany still could be translated as one. Man macht das nicht, one doesn't do that. And
I wish there was
woman
more
and mankind is all just related to an old word that used to mean one and now just means man. It's something weird happened to that word along the line.
I really wish that we still had one more commonly used in English, because it does allow you a way to speak more generally to an individual without gendering them. And if you try to do that in American English, especially, you just come across sounding like you're trying to be pretentious. It doesn't even come across, like, at least with British English, they could kind of get away with it with the accents, or play up to it a little bit. But Americans just like, well, one doesn't do that. You just sound like a jerk.
And if you say you don't do that, it also it doesn't sound pretentious, it just sounds belittling.
Yeah. But I think there's also it's a sort of affectation, because the word, like, you just don't have one does this, one does that. The word man in German, for instance, is used quite a lot in that sort of gender neutral place for, he or she. And we don't use it in English, American English especially. I wish we did more.
I don't think they use it over in Britain.
Well, they're more likely to because that's sort of the old-fashioned way of speaking. Oh, one doesn't say that sort of thing in polite company.
Exactly. It's not like you were like in the House of Lords or whatever.
Yeah. But so two genders. French for me was the genders weren't so much of a problem. I really struggle with the genders a lot more in German. But of course, they've done studies that show that depending on if the same word is gendered differently in different languages, and you ask people to draw the image, like a fork or a moon or an ocean, depending on the gender of it, like if it's a feminine fork, it'll be a little bit more frilly and delicate and elegant. And if it's a masculine, it looks a little bit, rounder and more, a utility thing rather than decorative. And so there is that even that level of our for people who deal with masculine and feminine and neutral in languages, that gendered human anthropomorphization of the words becomes an association with the word itself.
That's very interesting. Does it matter which gender you are yourself, or just?
I think that when I remember from the study, they didn't have it they didn't differentiate between sex, which makes me think it probably wasn't, because again, it was more the language. So if the word fork was masculine and feminine in both in French and German or something, or Spanish or Italian, they saw the patterns associated with the feminine category and the artwork rather than the person. So it's the language that's shaping it. Yeah.
I one thing I noticed about gendering things is how different the languages do it. Like, for example, German is the only language with a female sun, die Sonne, and a male moon, der Mond. And with all other languages that gender things, it's the other way around.
That is interesting. I hadn't noticed that, but you're right. Which you're right is a bit of an inversion from the sort of coming from the Greek myths from ancient times, and the association of the sun with masculinity and the moon with femininity. Yeah, interesting.
I do Duolingo to learn Spanish and Dutch, and what I always screw up is when they ask me to gender the sun. Gendering the moon in Spanish is easy because it ends in A. So that's I always type La Sol and not El Sol because I speak German, and a female sun just makes sense to me.
Yeah, and that's the thing with me. I literally have no frame of reference, right? So it's not for me when I learn a language that has genders in it. I can't remember if it's the same as mine or different from mine. It's just a random. Well, I mean, there are some rules and some guidelines and reasons and stuff, but it certainly can be, especially with 3 genders. It can be especially annoying because it's it's basically a 33% chance if I don't, know or can remember all the endings of der, ingling, ding, mus, ismus, kinds of things.
And I mean, you already started with an easy language, so everything is harder to you.
Yes, the easiest. Well, except for the spelling and pronunciations.
Spelling and pronunciation doesn't make sense. It
No,
just
not at all.
it doesn't make sense.
And it's certainly because it is a hodgepodge language of and of course German is like that too, and more especially with modern stuff, the way that like the googled and things are very easily incorporated into it. But I mean, yeah, there's all kinds of like in German, it so makes such sense when you start to get deep enough into the language where you can start to make connections. And I know this sounds silly, but you've got crank over here, which is sick, and Wagen, which means like some sort of car or vehicle or whatever. Krankenwagen, it's the sick car. It's the car that takes you. It's when you're sick. Whereas in English, it's ambulance. It's like
I mean, it makes sense too because it's derived from Latin, and I think ambulare is to help, but I'm not sure.
I don't know. Well, even like a Krankenhaus.
Yeah, the sick people's house.
Yeah. Again, makes completely sick. Literally, and when someone goes to, in English, well, American English, you'd say you're at the hospital, and in Britain they'd say, oh, he's in hospital, and here in German it's man liegt im Hospital. You lay in the sick house because you're in a bed. Just kind of conveys a little. Each one kind of for me, like just kind of conveys slightly different information, kind of in some ways.
Talking about the Krankenwagen, do you know what we call a hearse?
No.
A Leichenwagen, a body car.
Right, because that means like corpse, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yes. Okay. So yes, it's just very, very, and you start to realize that things are just basically called what they're called. Like,
yeah.
And what is it? The pound sign, I think we call it in English. It's the double hash, isn't it? So that mark, you get on your phone, you've got the asterisks. Or double cross, maybe?
You mean this one, not this one.
The one that's 2 lines down and 2 lines across.
The hashtag.
Like on your phone. Yeah, the hash thing. Oh, no, yeah, you're right. I said pound sign.
We call it that Raute. There we don't have a special word for that. We just call it like we would call it in math.
Oh, I thought someone said it was
what you mean is the division sign.
No. I'm thinking of not the plus or minus, but if you think about basically, sorry, the front of the hashtag. I don't know why I said pound sign. Sorry, but the hashtag is like, isn't it called like the double cross or something?
No. The division sign is called the double point.
Oh, okay. Okay.
It's this one, not
So you're talking
this
about
one.
the line. So in the double punct, you're talking about the two dots rather than
Yeah.
the line between them.
That sometimes has a division
Yeah.
line.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So sorry, I was talking about Krankenwagen and Krankenhausen, and then we
Yeah.
got distracted.
I think we should get into why we actually met up, what I wanted to ask you about, because you you are really the perfect person to ask this because you are a feminist. You speak German, but you don't. You understand some German,
That's true.
and you don't have it as your first language. You were thrown into it. Um, what do you think about the gendering with the in?
It's not as bad as Shen or like Fraulein, in the diminutives, but yeah, I guess it did strike me that the base root is the male, and then you just add the in to make it feminine. So König and Königin,
Would
Lehrer
be
and
king and queen, and
yeah, Lehrer and Lehrerin.
would both be teacher, but one would be male and the other would be female. And if you were to
Yeah,
say drei Lehrer, as in three teachers, that could be again one man and two women.
right. And yeah, so that to me, it does seem like women are derivative. I mean, the feminine is the derivative. Now I say women are derivative men, but linguistically, the feminine derives from the masculine always. And I find a little bit that I noticed because I watch shows in English that when I watch them again in German, some of the jokes or some of the surprises are ruined. Indiana
Yeah,
Jones, I'm thinking of in particular, because the third Indiana Jones movie, before he goes to Venice, he meets with the guy who's funding everything. And he says, "You're going to meet Dr. So and so, I can't remember the character's name now, when you get to Venice." And that's all he says. But in the German translation, it says that you're meeting the Artsen or whatever. You're meeting the feminine doctor, basically. And so when they get off the
that's
boat, and Indy is surprised, it doesn't make sense in German because he would have known from the description of her necessarily describing that she's a woman that he was meeting a woman. So that's a little bit like
I
disappointing.
actually haven't seen that movie in German. I've just seen the original, so I don't know. But they could have saved that joke because doctor is sometimes used for women.
Okay.
Doctorin is actually not that widely used.
No, I'm called Frau Doctor.
No. Really? Frau Doktor, not Frau Doktorin?
Well, I don't know. I mean,
Because
it's like Frau Doctor with DR, so I don't really know how it's abbreviated.
sometimes Frau Doktor implies the non-doctorate wife of a male doctor.
All right. I gotta
And
check
Frau
that out.
Doktorin would be you in that case.
Oh no, everyone's my whole career, they've all thought that I'm just there writing my husband's credentials. I very rarely use that to combination anyway. It's mostly my post, that will come addressed to me like that. So yeah, Frau Dr. DR. So does the feminine Doctorin have is it the same abbreviation?
Yeah, it's just dr dot or
Yeah.
dr period.
Hmm. Yeah, so I wouldn't know. I have to find out. But now at least I know to ask the question. But what's your opinion on it? I mean, because you grew up with that, and then to have a language where, well, I mean, you do get women who are called actors,
Yeah.
and of course you have the best actress category, but there are just general professions like lawyer, doctor,
What I
teacher.
find is it's always something special when it has gendered categories like an actor or some kind of regent. And for
Hmm.
normal things, you just get one. And I really, really like that about the English language. I know that there are a lot of women in Germany who are quite progressive and everything, who just hold onto this in suffix and just don't want to be gendered into a male category. And I don't really get that. And I haven't gotten an explanation for that I was entirely happy with.
I guess
Because
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Sorry, you finish your thoughts and then I'll react.
From my point of view, as someone who is not female and doesn't have to deal with it, I know I'm not the best person to ask, but it doesn't really make sense to me that you would want to be, as you said, a derivative in the language. Then, and I don't know if we can get rid of that, but I think in the long run we should. Language is always evolving, and maybe we should throw out gender-based language at some point.
If I could speculate wildly, what I would say is that it might be the case that one could see this, the dropping of the in a similar way to taking your husband's name, in that you're making the masculine the norm. And so one could, I think, make a case that the way to transform society is not to try to achieve male equality by negating women's role and treating women with the same word as men, but rather to elevate the feminine such that it doesn't matter if it's doctor or doctorin. The fact is the person's got a doctorate. So one, I think, could make a plausible argument that it's better to transform the society and maintain the divisions while addressing issues of equality than trying to create a mask of equality by eliminating one category, thereby eliminating the sort of reminder of women's, the feminized version of it. Like I said, I'm just wildly speculating, but it sounds like a credible pub talk that you would have, at the university after one or two when everyone was relaxed and chilling out. So
yeah, but the problem is that if you go in like that and try to change everything, you have to change the whole thing and basically create three categories: a male category, a neutral category, and a female category.
No, what I was saying is what I was saying is that instead of dropping the IN, work on making the IN as worth as much in people's eyes.
Yeah. Or, how can you do that? How can you do that if it's a derivative form?
I'm not saying I agree. I'm just saying this is an argument one could make.
Yeah, it could be refuted by how?
Well, sure, I could be. But this is my particular position. I'm just playing hypothetical linguist feminist, I guess. I don't even know what school of linguistics
I'm only playing the opponent of whoever you. I know that it's not your point of view. You actually have the same.
Okay. Well, I think then you could say it would be a bit like reclaiming. It would be right, but it would be like a reclaiming of the language, right? Sort of the same way the N word.
Yeah.
Is reclaimed. And then, you would actually have to fix the problems in the society and not just fix it linguistically.
Yeah. Wouldn't fixing it linguistically help fix it in the society? I kind of feel like, as it says in the title of this hangout, that just thinking this makes Germans more prone to be sexist than, let's say, Americans.
Well, I think part of it could, for instance, if you had a category where people's gender wasn't, or the sex of the person, we'll say, or their sex and gender, whatever their identity is. If you have that as only one word, like we stop saying police. What's singular police
This is
again?
adorable.
I know it's polizei, but it's in the singular.
Yeah, polizei would be the police. Polizist would be a policeman.
Yeah, and a feminine polizistin
would be a polizistin. Yeah,
is a woman, right? And just the police. That doesn't necessarily mean all the attitudes and the practices and the assumptions about men being better at this and women being better at that would be changed. You would just change the word without actually changing the attitudes. Now, maybe there would be some knock-on effects in other generations where you wouldn't be surprised when you pulled into a hospital and you said, the doctor will see you now, and a woman walks in. Yeah. But, maybe if you hear it's doctorin and you're not thinking, oh gosh, it's a woman, does she really know what she's doing?
Actually, that problem would exist in America, but wouldn't in Germany. In Germany, you wouldn't be surprised by a female doctor because they would have told you, die Ärztin. In this case, it's not doctor, it's Arzt or Ärztin.
Yes.
die Ärztin kommt gleich, or the female doctor is coming in a few, you wouldn't be surprised to see a woman. And in America, if someone told you the doctor will see you now and you saw a woman, maybe you would be more surprised if you spoke German and
Maybe.
were in an American hospital.
That's true. That's true. Although, yeah, those social issues are pretty deep. So I think it's an interesting conversation. It's not one for me. I'm an outsider looking in, and I don't.
That is great
actually,
about you.
Yeah. Well, I don't have a deep familiarity with German feminist thought, and I'm sure it because it's based in Europe, it's going to have a lot more left thinkers than feminism in the United States. But yeah, so but it's been, I think, German for me, the hardest thing I think I've said about it is the syntax of it, and also I just too often try to do a literal translation for English when I just have to get the hang of German. So, for instance, I'll go to a shop and I'll get, I'll order a coffee, and then they'll say, "Das was?" And I'm like, "That what?" and so there are just phrases that, like, literally it's just German. There's no English. What I mean is there anything else? Or would you like anything else? Or would that be all? But they don't say, would that be all? They just go, das was? And you're like, no, but.
That is not even a proper question. It's just a sentence with a question mark at the end.
Yes. And so that's, yeah, there's shortcuts that you can take with the language that make it, to my English ear, if I were to say it literally in English, a translation would sound very rough and almost like, I don't want to say caveman, but I guess I just did. I don't know. It's just like, it seems to be missing parts, it seems too abbreviated. And I find that very difficult English has a lot more structure to it.
Yeah.
And you're not as free to play with the structure as you are in German. So for me, it always sounds incomplete or shortened or abbreviated or not the way I would put it.
Yeah, there are a lot more ways to be more informal. And what I find is when I write something, especially if it's a letter or email, I write a lot more formal than when I just speak or chat. When I just speak German like I normally would, then I do the thing you were just talking about, which sounds kind of rude to foreigners, maybe.
Well, it's just the native language. I mean, it's just for me, like I said, maybe if I, hung out with some kids who were using a lot of, like a slang or whatever else, I would feel that same sort of displacement because I don't get. For me, French was very easy for me to relate to. So when I spoke French more fluidly than I do now, not fluently, without sort of struggling. I was told many times I had a very good French accent, and like the words just made sense to me. I would read it and I wouldn't have to really study it to understand it. German is like, I find it's like a lot harder to stick on in my brain. And because there's so much going on with the sentence construction and where the verbs go, and which verbs you're meant to use depending on whether you're moving or not, and the genders of the thing and the adjectives of the things that you want to describe their genders, but whether or not it's a definite article like ein or the definite article like a der, die, or das, that's going to change the kind of adjective ending you put, which of course always depends on the gender of the thing being described. And it's just like I start to try to formulate.
This is why this isn't a world language. This is why people speak English.
Yes, all my colleagues want to speak English with me, and so yeah, when I start a German sentence, I actually almost feel like I have to diagram it out, which makes me stutter a lot and stop and think. But and that's why it's been, actually, this is what I have to say without doubt, the German people I've met, all of them, are so happy you're speaking German, are so supportive of you speaking German, and they don't care if you make mistakes. They'll correct you. What your job is as a student of German is to stop being ashamed of making mistakes, get over yourself, listen carefully, and practice. and then say thank you to your teachers, because I make everybody my teacher. The people who sell me coffee, my colleagues, people on the tram. If I make a mistake in German, I ask everybody to correct me. So that was the best thing. That's definitely the most valuable lesson I've learned in my life. I learned from the German people, and that is, don't be embarrassed of your mistakes, because your embarrassment stops you from learning. You focus more on your embarrassment than the thing you're wanting to try to do. And that's just a waste of everyone's time. So accept your mistake, just be embarrassed. And then eventually you just go, I'm not perfect yet. It's so, don't keep making the same mistakes. If you can, learn, please learn. But yeah, that was really, I think that's a fantastic national attitude.
I don't even know whether that's it. I haven't heard it put like that. I don't know if we are just like that over here, or...
Oh, you'll definitely tell people if they've messed up.
Well, I do personally.
Hey, you shouldn't park here. You're driving too fast for this road. Oh, you should break all your boxes down before you put them into the recycling bin. It's empty, you old bint. They've just come. Nobody else uses this thing. It's not broken down because it has all my other cardboard stuffed into it.
There's a lot you can do wrong with German garbage.
It's so complicated. There's so many ways to go wrong with German garbage. That's true.
Like, we have garbage men over here who put little post-it notes on garbage bags they don't take away, explaining what's wrong with it.
F, you fail on your garbage duties. Take it, sort it out, and come back for next week.
Yeah.
That doesn't surprise me at all.
And it's not like it's a weird quirk of someone. There are official notes for this. They don't write it down, they tick what's wrong with it.
There's a place in the city of where I'm commuting on a pretty regular basis, and there's a set of lights. And the set of lights, there's actually it's two roads. You've got double traffic going in in opposite directions.
Oh, traffic lights, not like a street light.
Yeah. So you've got your Ampel, your street lights.
With a P, not with an F. Ampel.
Ampel, thank you. See? That's how you not be embarrassed. Like, oh, yes, Ampel, that's right. It's not an apple, it's an Ampel. And there's a slight lag where the farthest one will turn green before the nearest one turns green. It's about a second difference, but it's just enough that if you walk around there quite often, you'll know to start walking before your light turns green, which means you kind of get out of everybody, get ahead of anyone. And I noticed when I went there recently that they've got a little placard sign of a policeman with white gloves pointing at the one in the middle for that one extra second, so that people don't start walking early. I was like, oh my God, this is so German. This is like in the UK. I went back to the UK for a meeting recently, and I was with a colleague who's also German, and we're walking around trying to find something. We're also having a conversation, and we come up to a stoplight, which you would naturally, stop at with the red person on it. But of course, we're in London. And so people are like just streaming past us, crossing the street right in front of us. We're standing there just chatting, being so German. And then he finally turned to me and said, I think we should cross. You're like, oh yeah, that's right. It's Britain. Like, it doesn't matter here. Nobody cares. But in Cologne, if there's a 1 second difference in the two lights turning green, they're going to point it. They're going to put a little special police officer poster there pointing at it. That's what my tax money goes for. I'm fine with that. That's fine. They want to keep people safe. So
it's the same with me when I'm in England, or even just a few kilometers away in the Netherlands. We are just the weirdest when it comes to traffic lights.
Yeah, I mean, and I got pulled over, called over when I was very naughty and crossed against the red completely safely by an officer with very pretty eyes, I have to say. And he said, next time, I'll have to give you a ticket. And I think the ticket was €5. That was the penalty. So it's a sort of a very light touch enforcement. Like this, they kind of they fine you for the sake of fining you, but really you should know better. You're in Germany. Come on. Everybody stops. Yeah, it's funny. But yeah, I'm trying to, what I've done lately, this is my new thing, because I'm going to try to do my permanent residency.
Oh.
because I've been here long enough, and my reading German and my listening comprehension are much better than my speaking ability, because you have to. That's how you survive. As long as you can understand other people, you can read things. It kind of matters less if you can talk, unless you're in an emergency situation. But yeah, and I got Netflix, and so Netflix is awesome because it has a lot of times the subtitles in German and French.
Yeah.
And the audio in English. So if I'm tired, I can put on the English, but still see the German words and like get the vocabulary and the associations and learn new words while I watch it. And then if I'm more mentally acute, I can watch it in the German with the German. Although I have to say the subtitles on those things are usually translations of the English script, and that doesn't always match up with. Yeah, and sometimes it doesn't match up.
I just watch everything in the original language and put subtitles under it, so I don't really know.
I
put subtitles on it, not English.
Sometimes cultural references will be changed, especially. And some, like I noticed that in one episode, the character said, in response to being saying, this is a direct order, and his implication was, I'm going to obey. He said, well, pause. In that case, we're going to have to do that. Or we have to do X, whatever it was. And in the German, it was verstehe, which means, understood.
I understand.
And then in that case, we're going to have to do that. And so that's the kind of subtleties, like, okay, in that situation, there's no there's no German equivalent. Actually, I could say something like, verstehe.
Tja.
Understood.
The German equivalent to well is tja, T-J-A, or T. J is always J. Yeah. I got confused because I know that Americans and British people spell differently in a few places.
That's true.
Oh, yeah, I know why I got confused, because it's with a Z and Z, and I was very, very, very confused about someone on the radio calling Jay-Z JZ.
That's so adorable. No, I mean, I find that first, it's like, it's very British that, well, French too, I think they use that as well, but just the idea that somebody's so out of touch, like, oh yes, I really like that JZ.
It was a professor of music.
Oh no, don't say that. But still, I think that's adorable.
It is.
But I don't use tja, although we should also talk about Germans, the way they make sounds. I love jein. Jein.
Yeah, it's half nine, no, and half yes. Yeah. Combining to it can't be translated into English. It would be either. I mean, yo doesn't make sense, but ness could be. You could translate it as ness.
Yeah, you could say. I think the more accurate one would just be sort of, kind of.
Yeah, sort of.
Yeah, exactly. But it's, of course, sort of.
Not sort of, sorta.
Sorta. Yeah, that kind of
thing. With the R halfway there and the off being turned into an A.
Well, I remember watching The Wire the first time. So I'd been in the UK, I don't know, a couple of years, 4 or 5 years at that point. And I was getting caught up on The Wire because I'd heard about it through Charlie Brooker, of all people, in his Screen Wipe show. So I ordered it. I think it was I Love Film, which was the British version of Netflix in the day. And I put on The Wire, and I just like, what sums it up for me is that which is all right. Yeah. But with that Baltimore just vowels going, I was like, I need subtitles. And I had to watch The Wire with subtitles for like the first 3 or 4 episodes, just to get my ear right and catch some of the phrases and the way that they sort of like linguistically would say things. And once I kind of, it's like listening, for me, it's like Shakespeare too. If I watch something, like, I really like Henry V, but for me to watch Shakespeare, the first 20 minutes is all about me sort of really trying to decipher the patter and the flow of it and the language. And then once I kind of catch on, then I don't have to do that for the rest of the play. So that's interesting. I don't know if those German accents or dialects.
There is a very funny Bavarian movie called Wer früher stirbt, ist länger tot. Who dies earlier stays dead for the longer time. And I can't watch that without subtitles.
Okay,
But
yeah.
very strong Bavarian, which is kind of like the German equivalent of the Deep South in America.
Right. So a very unique, sort of
Yeah.
dense accent. Yeah. Well, I was
And
watching.
also farmers and right-wing idiots. So
Yeah, yeah, well, yeah, and AFD voters, right? Yeah, but I was on a road trip with a friend of mine, and we ended up. It was kind of interesting. We were watching the movie. What was it? I think it's called "What They Do in the Shadows," the New Zealand vampire mockumentary, and so it was made out of New Zealand. One of the guys from Flight of the Conchords is in it. I would, if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend you find it by whatever hook or crook. It's incredibly funny. But he's South African, I'm American, and we were like road tripping through France watching this comedy out of New Zealand, and like everyone had a different accent. Like the TV had one accent, my friend had one accent, I had another accent. It was just sort of a moment of weirdness.
So do you find yourself when you watch a lot of German stuff more prone to speaking German yourself afterwards? So is it easier for you if you just listen to a lot of German stuff to speak it afterwards?
I think so, but what I think I tend to do more is I listen to the interactions, and then I'll hear a response that I haven't heard before, like, or a construction, and then I'll try to file that away in my memory and bring it up more. But definitely, I've noticed, at least on the hearing side, I switched. I thought I stopped listening to something in German, and I wanted to switch back over to English because my head was tired. But then it started playing, and it took me 5 minutes to realize actually it was still in German.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah, that definitely happens.
that was a weird thing to happen. But yeah, yine. So the problem is I tend to watch this stuff late at night, and then I'll talk to myself in my head more in German. Like I'll just think about things
Yeah.
in German. But of course, I don't know if I make mistakes. Then I go to sleep and I wake up the next day, and then I usually listen to the news in English. But so my first German of the day is always a bit rough because I don't start my day with English. I tend to end my day with German more than
Why
I
not
start my day
you
with German.
just to put on a WDR5?
It's just
Oh.
because Trump, I have to watch him like a stalker. Like I don't know, I'm obsessed
Ah.
with. I have to know what he's done, what's up with the Russia probe, what other man has fallen because of sexual harassment or sexual abuse allegations. I think yes, some other guy, some big star in the music industry went down today. Yeah,
I
I
haven't heard
can't.
that yet.
I think I don't want to say his name wrong because I've seen him on a few things, and I really don't want to get it wrong. I know it's got Russell in it. I'm also way too old for that. But anyway, he's I don't want to get it wrong. But yes, somebody else came. There were more charges
All right,
brought
I
out,
haven't heard that. I'm gonna check
and
on
the
that
guy,
later.
yeah, the guy stepped down. So in the interest of not being wrong, I'm just going to say somebody who isn't Matt Lauer and wasn't Garrison Keeler. And that was just like in the last 2 days, somebody else has stepped down because of sexual whatever. I don't know the details of
I mean,
he's been accused of.
it's
So
horrible that that happens, but it's so good that people are finally taking consequences for that.
I think it's I hope it's a kind of. I mean, I have a theory or a speculation as to why I think it's happening in the U.S. right now, but I do hope it spreads. I mean, I do hope that
Yeah.
people seeing this stuff happening, and of course, some of it is international. Kevin Spacey got in trouble in London. I think the French police were looking into some Harvey Weinstein things. So I mean, it has at least international connections. But I'm hoping women in more countries. I don't know. Maybe they're not feeling the same kind of change of atmosphere because I really do think I know that that this trend has actually been going on for a little bit longer. We had Roger Ailes, who was ousted from his position. Bill O'Reilly was ousted, and also there was some I want to say Eric Bolling. I think I've got that right from Fox. He also ended up having to leave the news because of he was being pervy and rapey and stuff. But I think the march in January really has connected a whole group of women. If online, in spirit, hashtag resist, somebody, you know where they're coming from if they're not a Russian bot, because those are our politics in America. But yeah, and so I think with that sort of the feeling of that especially after the Harvey Weinstein thing just blew up, and people realized when it's not one woman or two women, it's 5 women, it's 9 women, it's 18 women, it's 14 women, it's 30 women, that there's power in numbers. And the sad reason for these numbers is because these men, and it's been exclusively men to this point, prey on people women over and over and over and over and over again. And those victims now are finding each other, finding their voice, and they're finding it at a time when women, a lot of women, men too, but a lot of women are so offended by Trump and offended by the fact that too many Americans voted for a man who admitted a sexual assault and sexual predation. And I feel like collectively, a lot of people, and not just women, but men too, like enough of this bullshit. And by saying enough, sorry, this isn't to do language, but I'm now having a bit of a rant. By saying enough, we've thrown the door open. And it was one thing when it was Harvey Weinstein and he was first and everyone knew he was an asshole and he was a horrible person, and just confirmed like how icky people had kind of thought of him. And so it didn't have a huge emotional impact. But then it started to be other people, other men. And you've got your Kevin Spaceys, you've got it's just like so many of them now, I can hardly keep track of all the some of the directors. And then we just hear these horrible stories, Louis C.K. and the masturbation, and now Matt Lauer having an ability to lock the door by pushing a button under his desk so he could trap women in his office. And you're just like, and this is what I think we are now processing, is how awful it is. You have people that kind of are in your life, they're in your entertainment world, and maybe you like them because you like their content. Or with Matt Lauer, people were getting up and watching him in the mornings and choosing his channel, choosing his perspective. And then it's like being cheated on, even though we're not the people the viewers aren't the ones who he violated. I don't even want to say any kind of comparison there, but there's still this betrayal of who you thought that person was, and not only who they turned out to be, but like the darkest parts, right? Because sexuality is such an intimate part of who we are, and it kind of exposes a little bit of, when you use your position to prey on young men like Kevin Spacey did, or you actually order a lock for your door, like Matt Lauer did.
Like there is someone knew about that, someone built that.
Yeah.
Somebody's job no, that was a German construction of an English sentence, so sorry. It was somebody's job to help someone else rape someone.
Yeah, or at least provide. Yeah.
What?
Now you could of course say
no, it's helping to rape someone.
Yeah, I mean, definitely you could. I mean, there might be legitimate reasons for it, but still, it was given. So getting back to, sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, but there's one other thing I wanted to say was, I had a realization tonight, because one of the things people commented on so Charlie Rose, a guy who was on CBS, a big national broadcaster, he got fired for exposing himself and pursuing younger staff women. And then Matt Lauer came out, and in both cases, their female hosts sat and made the announcement and dealt with their sort of friendship with him, of their shock and their embarrassment, and they were sort of put on camera to explain away their company's messing up on letting these guys, get away with it, the culture that let them get away with it. And also on NBC with Savannah Guthrie, I think. And one part of me thinks, it's like, is it Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde? And I think maybe the harder question to ask is, or the harder thing to deal with as a culture, is that people that we would never think could do that. And it's not that people are evil and good. It's that even good people can do awful things.
And awful people can act like they aren't awful people.
Yeah,
which is more like
but it makes it, because it's people we thought we knew, it's people sometimes more and more, kind of touching us personally. And I think as this phenomenon goes on, more people, I'm hoping that the sexual harassment stuff will continue to come out and be dealt with. But yeah, I think we're going to have to deal with the fact that you can put someone in a good, bad category. Like you go, Matt Lauer, you're dead to me, I never want to see you again. Years he was doing those things, and he still came across as a good guy. And I think the existential question, the more important question than Matt Lauer's career, which I'm fine if it's over with. He can wipe his tears with $20 bills. But how wrestling with this, the monster within some people, and that I think is a scarier, harder thing to deal with. Like, what if you find out that one of your friends did something like that? How would you react? And I'm thinking,
if you look at the statistic, it is one of your friends.
I mean, there's like and it's usually not all men, hashtag not all men. A lot of times it's predators, like we've seen. It's these patterns of getting women in certain positions or finding certain women attractive and setting things up, whether it's bringing them to our hotel room or asking for permission. But yeah, this is, I think it's a really difficult conversation to have, but of course it's much better to have it than to let what has been going on continue going on. So sorry, we're way off language now, but it's just current events.
I can actually tie the bow back to something I wanted to bring up. So what actually hasn't happened to me yet is that I found out that someone who I thought was all great and who I was a fan of came out with something like that, or was outed for something like that. Most of the people I don't really care about. For example, Louis C.K., I just think is a low-rate George Carlin impersonator. You all right there?
Yeah, I just had to cough, so I muted myself.
All right, yeah. Now the bow. Do you know the George Carlin bit where he talks about language changing, where he says shell shock, then became battle fatigue, which is the longer word and harder to understand, and then it became post-traumatic stress disorder. And after he died, or shortly before he died, there was a fourth step, and it became PTSD. Now it's just letters, and we are further removed from
words entirely.
Yeah.
I actually remember. I'm pretty sure I must have watched that the first time it aired. I don't know. Maybe someone can go back and find out how many times.
You don't look that old, actually.
Oh, I'm in my mid-40s. Yeah. So it would have been sometime in the 80s, and I was at my dad's, and it was up late at night, and he had gone to sleep, and I was like up watching the television really late, quietly, and I saw that bit, and I was literally like mesmerized while he was telling that story. And so that little bit I remembered for years and years and years. It had such a big impact on me in terms of, again, the construction of language and how language itself frames and directs how we're it kind of primes us to deal with the world in a certain kind of way. And this is why it's so powerful, that if you can control the language around things, or you can that will then again kind of sets your mind priming. And as we're talking about how you think about things in language, for instance, science and the natural sciences and the social sciences, people think of the sciences as being the hard, science. Oh, it's science.
Wissenschaft.
But Wissenschaft isn't science. It's really, can you break that down into, like, it's two parts?
Yeah, Wissen is knowledge, and Schaft comes from schaffen, which means creating. So Wissenschaft is the way to create knowledge.
Precisely. And so it doesn't have that kind of, people wouldn't say in German, social Wissenschaft isn't Wissenschaft. It's like, it's not a line between types of social science and natural science. There's no, that kind of, that sort of distinction doesn't seem to really exist. It's knowledge production. So the question is the knowledge validly produced? And that's, I think, again, the way that German is able to take smaller concepts and unite them to get a bigger whole. So you actually get more content in the word than just science, which is a word that represents a concept, but Wissenschaft implies what the goal is. So in that way, it's beautiful.
I never thought about it like that. It's amazing to see someone else look at your language and tell you how they feel about it. It really makes you think about your language much more. In the last year, I've been working with refugees, teaching them German. there is a family of refugees which I see 3 times a week. And they really shaped how I think about my language so much. And also I feel, because I'm a big part of their learning experience, I feel like I have a lot of power and responsibility of how they use the language. And so I just go home and I have to drive for like 20 minutes between where I work and my home place. So I just sitting there and think about one sentence where I think that wasn't right for them to learn like that. That make them think something. Mostly it's, I said something that could be interpreted as being sexist. Because German is just a sexist language.
Mm-hmm.
And I try not to use gendered language a lot, but especially with them. But it's just hard.
Yeah, and that's why, the other thing, same thing is, as a teacher, I would always try to swap between the gender and racial names and things in my class, just so that it's not always the default one. So I think is giving that
when you need
variety.
examples, or
Yeah, precisely.
yeah, I can totally
But also,
see that.
yeah, but just in terms of, if being aware of that and being conscious of it, I think it shows that you're a very responsible teacher. That's good. And also, I think in some ways you can think of yourself as, you're introducing them to this language, but in some ways you're seeing your language through the eyes of an explorer, right? Someone who's never seen the terrain before, and they're trying to put together the pieces and understand how things get put together. And so, yeah, I'm sure, I know from, like I said, the piecemeal part of it, the moments in my German learning experience where I knew I was making some progress was when I started to get the hang of where to split words in order to figure out what the components are. Like, where do double T's go? Where does the L, is at the start of the word or the beginning? And now I can even...
Is that the start of the word or the beginning?
Oh, sorry.
Speaking your mother tongue right now.
Well, I mean, so is it the start of a new word, right? Or kind of thing, or the end, I guess, of the last word. You're right. I'm a little bit free associating. And so, yeah, I'm totally throwing everything off. But yeah, so knowing that was, now even if I don't know what a word means, I still have confidence I can break it up and then search those individual subwords, verbs, or whatever else to break it and to put it together. So.
And you can do that with German much easier than with English.
Oh, well, yeah, we don't really have the kind of compound words.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But then again, you have a lot of stuff derived from Latin and Greek, which you also have in Spanish and Dutch and German and French and Italian and so on and so forth. Like, there are a lot of languages that steal from Greek and Latin.
Oh, my ieren verbs are my favorite verbs. Oh, I love my reparieren, installieren, all of my funktionieren, whatever, studieren. I love my ieren verbs because they all have the same conjugation. And so it's really easy for you to rapidly grow your verb vocabulary just by basically...
You can basically take any Latin verb ever and make it a German verb. And if you already speak Italian or Spanish or French, you can just take all your Latin verbs that you already know and make them German. And also vice versa. You can take words from German, like reparieren, and put them into Spanish.
Yeah. Does it work with like a buchstabieren as well?
No, because that is a Latin style word, but from a native German Buchstabe.
Yeah.
Buchstabe is a German verb. It literally means Buch is book, and Stabe comes from Stab, the stick or the staff. And it means letter. Yeah.
Yeah. The stuff that goes in books.
It means rune. It means rune.
Oh, okay.
A Buchstabe is a rune, and it means a letter. And so Buchstabieren is lettering. basically, even though lettering is something else than buchstabieren is, because lettering is not spelling.
And German does have these like really descriptive words, but then, for instance, like sky and heaven, Himmel and
Yeah,
Himmel.
yeah,
It's one
Himmel
word.
in Himmel. Also, sex and gender, Geschlecht and Geschlecht, which sounds like it means go badly.
Yeah, you're right. It does. It does. Yeah, and so I was talking to a colleague, and she was expressing frustration at this sort of when you're trying to talk about sex and gender. We were discussing the trans community and how much more difficult it is in German because you always have to kind of try to specify which concept you're trying to use,
Yeah,
even though the word
biologisches
is the same.
Geschlecht and emotionales Geschlecht.
Yeah.
You say physical sex and emotional gender, basically. But
Yeah, it's like
I personally just use Geschlecht as sex and gender as gender. So
seems to me the easiest thing to
yeah,
do is to import it, because that's one thing, like unlike the French, and I love many French individuals, but like the whole the official policy of or at least there used to be, I don't know if it still is, that they invent new French words rather than just adapting
yeah.
English. But as Germans, I mean, the things that I love also about German is when I come across a word like aufgepimp, like aufpimpen, like that, just
Up pin
because I
baby.
was trying to say, because I've got this little like scooter roller that I roll around on, and I got a coffee thing for it. I was like, hey, I pimped out my scooter. They're like, yeah, aufgepimped. I'm like, seriously, that's a verb?
Yeah, it is.
Aufgepimpt?
When Exhibit had this show, Pimp My Ride, it was on German television. I think with subtitles. I never actually saw it, but it still had its title. So that is where
Yeah.
it came
Yeah.
into
And
this.
I have a lot of fun playing with that. Like there's any kind of technical word, like I just so in the past tense in German, in English the ed goes at the end.
Yeah, and in German it's
Walked.
somewhere.
Yeah, so it starts with a lot, oftentimes, except for our iron verbs. You'll have the g at the beginning. So yeah, like googled. It's just you just throw whenever you're like, oh, I downloaded, whatever. I'll just kind of play with the
Also gedownloadet or runtergeladen.
runtergeladen. Yeah, the runter,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. We forgot to talk about crazy German noises. So yeah, you mentioned about tja, but there's also just noises that my friends make that are really unique to German, I think, like wah. But I don't do it breathy enough. Like pwah, that was closer to it. You've got to have a sound like a tire that's exploding a little bit. I mean, there's some really funny, earthy, just sort of, I don't know how to describe it, like ringing kind of noises that you hear Germans making. I don't know. I guess maybe that wasn't something like you're not.
I never heard that you don't make that noise. Is it the noise that like a comic writer would spell out as BOAH?
I would probably put it as BWAAAAH, like blah kind of thing. Because Americans will go or hi, how are you? That kind of thing. And so we have our own sort of noises that that are just expressive. I don't know what the linguistic term for those noises are, but there are some unique ones I find. I think in Scotland it's just the word fuck. I think that's every other.
In Scotland, everything is a word fuck.
Yeah. So yeah, sometimes I try to mimic some of the sounds too, but I'm such a foreigner. But no, I mean, I think this is a kind of like when I didn't really know what I was getting myself into when I moved to Germany. I didn't know what I was getting myself into when I started to learn German. But having done it now for several years and getting to the point where, I can probably catch 80% of a television episode that I haven't seen before and pretty much follow along. Yeah, I know Kevin Logan jokes about it not being a lovely language, but there's beauty and elegance, there's wordplay. There's things I'm sure I don't even understand because I don't understand all the literature.
We shouldn't listen to Kevin because Kevin also thinks that there are no good movie remakes.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. So sometimes he's on point.
I don't know if you object yourself to watching that, I haven't watched through all of it. The hangout he did with Carl Gon.
No.
No,
Oh,
the first thing, the first thing they
well,
do
there was
is
a couple of
agreeing
them.
that there are no good movie remakes, and then I watched like 10 minutes more of it because Kevin is nice, but I just can't stand Carl Gon.
I know. Yeah, I agree. Like, I don't go seeking out his content by any means. By any means. But
I've
yeah, so
never
Kevin's
watched a full
wrong.
video of him.
Trying to think. I think in total in my life, I've probably now assumed I've got enough bits and pieces here and there to have seen the highlights of his oeuvre, as it were. Yeah. But yeah, the other thing I notice I do get a little bit snooty about is using the dative when you should use the genitive. I did catch a TV show where I thought that they should have used the possessive, the genitive, rather than the dative. And our teacher
Nobody
said,
uses the genitive in German.
I know, but it's so pretty.
It is. There are very funny books about, and this is a joke that you will get, but most of the audience, if somebody is going to watch this, won't because you speak German and it's not. You can't translate the joke. The book series is called Der Dativ ist dem Genitiv sein Tod. Have you seen those?
No, but I think I've actually heard this, discussed before. Yeah.
They are. I think you would love them. Just pick one of the. They are like 5 by now or 6, but you can also
Okay.
just read the guy's columns on Spiegel.de.
Okay.
He's called Bastian Sick. Did I freeze?
No.
Yeah, just the whole window froze.
Oh. I'll keep I'll try to always pose in a way that I won't get stuck like that. Yeah, I mean, I really like, so for people who don't speak German, there are four cases, I think is the right term.
Yeah, cases. We call them Fälle, but it would be cases in English.
Right. The nominative, the nominative is the name when you're naming something. The accusative, which we would call the direct object, the dative, which is the indirect object, and then the possessive category, which they call the genitive.
Which we don't use anymore.
Right, because this is a thing, I notice with all of my colleagues when they write something like, this is the document of the institute. And I go, institute's document. And then I'll say the letter from this place, and like this place's letter or whatever. And I'm constantly taking from the of the and switching it over to the possessive, usually for word count. But yeah, in German, you can say like the book of my father, which would, or from my father, to indicate, right, who it came from. Or you can say my father's book.
Yeah.
And that, for me, so could you give an example of something in the dative versus something in the genitive for the masculine category, because that uses the S's, if I'm remembering correctly. And you'll hear, for the members of the audience, that the genitive just has softer sounds in it than the dative. So can I put you on the spot to do that?
You know what? I just use the cases and I don't really think about the cases. And so I have to get back into that because I've got a new student today. She's from Syria and she writes a test on this.
Ah, yes. So
and so I have to get into this anyway. And what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna read Bastian Sick's breakdown of it because he is funny and he explains things very well. And I think
here's an example, maybe like deal of the day.
Yeah.
Right. So could you do that in the dative form and then do it in the genitive form?
All right. The deal of the day would be das Angebot des Tages or das Tagesangebot. What's it?
Yeah. Well, which one would you say? I guess you wouldn't say from with that.
Yeah.
But yeah. So, but yeah. So the des Tages.
Das Buch von meinem Vater. It was the one you wanted, right?
Right.
You have the vom with the soft M, which is of the or of my.
Right. Versus my father's book.
Yeah. You don't say that. That would sound weird.
You would. Like the Book of My Father sounds
Yeah.
weird. It sounds like the Praetoritum. It sounds like, when you say they sound like a book, it would sound really weird to, English. You just say my father's book. Yeah. But I did learn that, sorry, they did learn that they have something called the idiot's apostrophe now in German.
Yeah.
It's developed.
The morons apostrophe.
Can you describe, for people who don't know what that is?
In Germany, you can do an S on the end of a name, like right now we are on my channel, which would be Ruven's channel with an apostrophe, but in German it would be Ruven's Kanal without an apostrophe. So if I wrote Ruven's Kanal but put an apostrophe between the N and the S, that would be considered a Moran's apostrophe, ein Deppen-Apostroph.
Right, because so many people either learn English first and then come to German, or they have German kids who've learned English, and they start to add the apostrophe into the German,
and Dutch,
the teachers who really
Dutch too has an apostrophe for plurals.
Oh, okay. Well, of course, in English it just changes where you put the apostrophe, but yeah. Oh, that's confusing.
You know how I explain what an apostrophe is and how to use it?
Oh, no.
You are American, so you might not know this. Do you know about the Asterix comics?
Yes, I do know about those. Yes.
Have you seen when either of them punches one of the Romans up and they fly underneath, they fly out of the panel like this?
Okay, yes.
I always say Obelix kicked the letter out and there are his feet still.
And so he's the apostrophe?
Yeah. It's just the easiest way to explain.
Yeah, well, a lot of English speakers get that wrong as well. So when we use it, it's more embarrassing.
It's really easy to use in English. Like, I don't understand how you can fail at English if it's your first language. I understand if your first language is something else and you are just not into learning languages. But if it's your first language, it's so easy. Like, I picked up English in a time when I was suspended from school by watching English stuff. I haven't even learned it from school. I've learned it from like DVDs. So how can you fail at that if it's all you ever heard your whole life?
Well, just because you hear it doesn't mean you can spell it correctly.
Yeah, but you read it all the time as well.
Yeah, that's true. No, there's no excuse. I mean, especially like with apostrophes, it's only for when you own something. It's you possessed. It's not like just for plurals and
and if you kick out a letter like in don't and can't and
the contract. You kick out exactly that part. Yeah. But my colleague was saying that what she struggles with now, because she's been speaking English. I mean, we in the office where I'm very lazy and we speak almost entirely English. But she said the hard part now in her life, because she switches between English and German and during the day so often with her, for people that we deal with where we work, but also like just in the office, that she struggles with like, oh God, what's address? How do I spell address? In which language? Is it 2 Ds? Is it
I have to look that word up every time. And that is why I mostly write Anschrift in German.
So you can get around it.
Do you know where this word Anschrift comes from?
No.
No. There was this guy, he was called von Zesen, who didn't like other languages being in German. And so he invented words like Anschrift instead of Adresse, to kick out a French word in this case.
Right.
And he also invented a lot of lots of other words that we still use and a lot that we don't. For example, he was going to call a mummy a dried corpse, which didn't catch on.
True. Mummy is a little catchier and a bit more Hollywood. Well, I guess we've been going for about an hour.
Yeah, I think we should kind of end this right about now.
But can we do it again?
Let's do it again. Something like this. This was really fun. We should do
it was
more hangouts. we should do another language hangout. Maybe if someone wants to do this, contact either me or Kristi. If you speak another language, that would be really fun. So we
Yes.
can do that with someone else next time. Maybe with Maddie, where we can actually what we didn't get into. The other thing where we actually disagreed is the usage of certain terms, like if we should reclaim the term SJW or not.
Okay, well, yeah, that's going to
And
be its whole.
yeah, that is going to be, and I know we are going to disagree on that. And Maddie and I actually got a huge fight with that.
Okay, well,
We have
look, yeah.
talked about that. There are, you can check out our podcast. It's on hold right now, but there are still 7 episodes on that out.
Okay.
And in the end of the first and beginning of the second episode, we get into this. And I actually do this in German as well. The German equivalent of the SJW would be the Gutmensch, the good
Okay.
human.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of call myself that. So because
well,
yeah.
again, it's like language and set and what it means and what it sort of primes you for. It's meant to convey. Very interesting question. So yeah, let's have that conversation.
Let's have another hangout. Contact me or Kristi if you want to be in on the next one. Of course, I'm not going to put you in here blind. If I don't know who you are, we're going to talk before I put you on air. Because now that I said this, I know that there are going to be people who, especially because it's you, who, are like your opponents and see you like this evil monster or something. I've seen a video on Kevin's channel, or was it on yours, by a YouTuber, I'm not going to name drop because I don't want to give him attention, who seems to see you as some kind of basically Borg queen.
Yeah.
Like, you don't even have a big channel and you don't see radical things.
I know. But they're not interested in who I am as a person. They're interested in creating a character that they don't have the power to actually defeat my arguments and engage with me intellectually because they don't know how to.
We've seen.
Yeah, yes. And so
I haven't watched that whole thing, by the way. I just can't.
Yeah. So then what you do is you just attack their persons personally because you can't beat their arguments. And so, yeah, it's like the thing, like most recently, for instance, Bering is now blaming me because he got himself booted off Twitter. Like, why are you giving me that much power over your life, Bering? Why are you saying that, you can't resist, putting things on Twitter and so I set this evil trap. Like, I don't understand why. I mean, I do understand. It's because he doesn't want to take responsibility, but it has nothing to do with reality. And it's all about feeding a narrative and creating content for hate. But anyway, we're off on a tangent now. So
yeah,
my apologies.
No need to apologize.
Okay.
Maybe for name dropping someone I didn't want to have name dropped.
Oh, that's all right. Well, we'll keep that. Okay, put that. We'll clip that bit out.
Yeah, it's all right.
That's all right.
People are gonna know what I'm talking about anyway.
Yeah.
I guess. Yes, because I think his people are gonna watch this.
Yeah. Well, they'd have to stick all the way to the end. So that's a little.
That is not their talent. That is
just to keep watching all the way to the end. But yeah, this was a lot of fun. We should do it again very soon.
Yeah, we should definitely do this again. Yeah, I think that's all. And
yeah, you want to say goodbye?
Watch my other stuff. There is some of my other stuff you should watch. There's a lot of Kristi's other stuff you should watch. Because there is actually much more of Kristi's stuff.
Yeah, I've been cranking out.
A lot of mine isn't that good because I'm pretty new to YouTube, and a lot of Kristi's stuff, I have to say, is drama. So
well, lately it depends on what's been going on.
I'm always happy to see your new stuff, and I'm especially if it isn't drama, because I stay away from that. It's just
I have a new podcast. I was on a podcast that actually came out Monday, Embrace the Void, and we talk about standpoint theory and intersectionality from a more practical social science application perspective. And I was planning on putting that out tomorrow. So that will be, because I put out Ted's video yesterday.
To a layman like me?
So it's basically intersectionality is the concept that there are multiple ways that people can be oppressed, and we have to understand the different ways people can be oppressed and how they can interact.
Yeah, I know what intersectionality is, but the whole thing just sounded very complicated as a whole.
Okay, well, and well, I mean, we get into this podcast.
Would I get something out of the podcast or not?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because
Okay,
I'm
I check that out
explaining.
then.
Okay, I'm explaining it to two people. One person who understands it, and then one person who doesn't understand it
All right.
yet. So it's not like they don't understand it; they haven't really heard about it too much, and so we discuss it. So yeah. So you can look forward to that non-drama.
All right. Another non-drama thing. Will there be another of your Jesus videos?
I really want to make one. Yes, I have. So it's yes.
What next on that? What?
Paul. So my next one up in that one
that will
is
be
looking
fun.
at Paul's theology and how it hangs on the resurrection. It hangs on the death and resurrection of Jesus. And if Paul didn't believe in a literal death and resurrection, none of his theology makes sense.
Yeah. You know that somebody is going to claim that Paul is the inventor of Christianity and of Jesus.
Yeah,
right?
well, they would be wrong.
But you kind of have to refute that before they can bring that up.
Yeah, well,
I'll do.
So my idea was, well, of course I was on holiday, so I had a chance to just spend a week and really get into it and get into the and then I had a conference and then MythCon and then it all kind of devolved. But yes, in my head I have it scripted, but then after MythCon I was doing all these podcasts and hangouts like this, and so if I do a hangout like this tonight, I just I want a night off tomorrow, and so it means that because I've been doing so many hangouts instead of videos, the video making has been kicked to the back burner. So I'm thinking probably around for Christmas. Now we're coming up to December, so it'd be a good time to do some more Jesus videos. So I'll do another 3 or 4 installments and get through that, because it's already written and ready to go. I just have to write it up as a script and record it and edit it and produce it and upload it. So not that much.
All right, yeah. So if you didn't click out now because we talked about this stuff so much, you should check out my video on Luther, which I put up on the 500th anniversary of the Reformation a few days back, and I might make a video about my feelings on Christmas because it's going on Christmas. Yay!
Was that the big Martin Luther party everybody had?
Yeah. I made a video explaining basically why Luther is very problematic but still very important, and how to deal with people like that. I made that video before all the allegations, but a lot of the things I said about Luther would still apply to, let's say, Kevin Spacey.
Well, I mean, I don't know what I still have to watch the video because I missed that one. Maybe it was because it came out when I was away. But yeah, Martin Luther was crazy anti-Semitic.
Yeah, and crazy
anti-Semitic. Yeah. And so
I don't get a Christian anti-Semitism. Because it's a Jewish-based religion. So.
Well, that's kind of like the Oedipal complex. Maybe is the best way to understand it.
They want to overthrow. I'll link that to you.
Yeah. Yes, please do. Please do. Okay, so now we're really gonna go off here.
Now we're gonna go off, and we're gonna see each other sometime later. See ya.
Yes.